I want to talk to you.
My mic wasn't recording for this part of the video, but I'm just introducing our film. It is Judas and the Black Messiah and the impact that it has on the community and what it means now and how it correctly shows, in my opinion, how the government has pitted communities against each other for the greater good, quote unquote, when we all know that it was not. I focus on Fred Hampton and introducing him, played by legendary actor Daniel Kaluuya, and Bill, but I call him William because I got it all mixed up the entire time. Um, the man who goes on to betray him later in the in real life and in the film.
It was a scam. They were both set up. They were used as tools against each other to destroy each other. They are a prime example of what the US government will do in order to ensure that people who want to reach for better cannot achieve it. Some people think because of rhetoric and history that the US government has continued to push that Fred Hampton was a violent, hateful person who hated white people, who did not like other people who were not black. And that obviously is not true. You should listen to a speech of his. You should listen to all of his speeches. Most of them are recorded. He's not a figure that existed thousands of years ago who we just know about in writings. He was not a man who wrote in the back dim rooms of a closet and then hoped that someday somebody would act upon his words. No. He practiced what he preached. In the later half of his life, as if he even got to live a long one, which he didn't, because it was horribly snuffed out by the US government because he was a violent person while he was sleeping. He was sleeping and they killed him. That's a fact. Look it up. In the later half of his life, did he encourage more guns? Did he encourage the use of violence in return of violence? Yes, but you also have to think about the time period that he was living in. He had been arrested falsely. He knew that the US government was coming for him. He knew he was going to die. And it was going to be at the hands of the government that claimed to care about the people. And if we know one thing, we know that the US government does not care about the people. I am not an anarchist. But in the words of Fred Hampton, I am a revolutionary. His most famous words ever. He has a brilliant speech on it. Judas and the Black Messiah is a film with Fred Hampton playing. No, I'm sorry, with Daniel Kaluuya playing Fred Hampton and what is his name? I forgot. I just threw my phone. Stanfield playing William O'Neill. I always forget his name. And a lot of the times, and this film does a brilliant job of portraying these two men stuck between a rock and a hard place. A lot of people like to blame William O'Neill for the actions that he took, for the fact that he sold out his people. I don't blame him. In all honesty, I'm not mad at him. No. Because one way or another, the US government was going to buy somebody. I think that the problem that most people have with William O'Neill is that he fell into into the trap. He fell into the snare of the government to sell out the people. going directly against everything that he believed in. Judas and the Black Messiah has a lot of impact on today. And you might be like, oh, well, you're praising a socialist. No, I'm praising well, yes, he was a socialist, but also I am not a socialist. I don't believe that socialism is going to solve all our problems, and I don't think that capitalism obviously is not going to solve all our problems. I don't think any economic system is ever going to solve all our problems, but that's not what we're here talking about today. Judas and the Black Messiah, as in the name, is a representation, a play on what Jesus faced with Judas, an innocent man who was teaching and preaching peace and teaching that people could do better for themselves if they cared about people, was framed by the government because they felt threatened by him. They felt threatened by his words. They felt threatened by the fact that people were listening and believing him and starting to respond in that way. That they were threatened because he fed the poor. Do you see the connection in that title? Jesus was shamed by the Pharisees and the Sadducees because he would perform miracles on the Sabbath, meaning he would perform miracles on the day of rest that was mandated by law, that you did nothing. Basically, you couldn't walk so many feet from your house, you couldn't do your job, you couldn't do this work. It was considered shameful and sinful for you to do anything outside of what was permitted on the Sabbath. And Jesus outright denied that. He said, no, I'm God, so I can do what I want, because your laws are man-made and they are not made in the image of God, right? Exactly. And then, if you don't know the story of the crucifixion, Jesus was killed on a cross. I would hope that people know that. But he was betrayed by one of his close friends, one of his 12 disciples, Judas. And Judas sold him out to the Pharisees for a bag of silver in most translations, though that might be off, or gold in some as well. And when he got to Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, it was in the Garden of Gethsemane. Wasn't? I don't know. Okay. Anyway, and when he betrayed Jesus, he kissed him on the cheek, and he told the Pharisees, "The man that I kissed on the cheek is going to be Jesus." And that was it. That sealed the deal. And then later, Judas hung himself out of remorse and guilt after he threw the gold back the silver back to the Pharisees. But the deed was done. He had, for the sake of his own well-being, for the sake of himself, for the sake of his idea of what God should be like, sold out God, the man. And that's a tragedy. And that's the tragedy of it all. And when with the title of Judas and the Black Messiah, you obviously, if you know the story of Fred Hampton, you know what you're walking into when you go to see the film. When you pull it up on the screen, you know what you're walking into. But at the same time, you are confused because a lot of people don't. We just know that Fred Hampton was killed and that he was a violent man who believed that everybody should die except for black people. That's what they tell us. But that's not true. He has a speech where he talks about white power to the white people, brown power to the black people. Brown people, yellow power to the yellow people, black power to the black people, X power to those we have not named. That is almost a direct quote, okay? he was a man with many flaws. Yes, Fred Hampton was not a perfect man. No person is a perfect person. It's crazy to expect anybody to be one. I think in this political climate that we live in today, and I really hesitated to make this video, many people um, need to be more informed. I want to sit down with a few people that I know, and I just want to ask a simple question. Do you know who Emmett Till is? And if they do know who Emmett Till is, I hope that it's they know what happened to him. And if they don't know who Emmett Till is, I'm really going to have to reconsider my thoughts on in our relationship, in all honesty, because I I want to be a revolutionary. I don't want to sit in the back and write in silence, hoping that one day somebody is going to take me up on my words. I want to live what I preach. I'm a black woman. I can't get away from that fact. I was born black. I will die black. Even if I develop vitiligo sometime in my lifetime, I'll still be a black woman. There's no getting around that. I wonder. I think of a lot of the times um, the dichotomy, two-way street that black people often have to walk down. And I think of Tupac Shakur when I think of that. Tupac grew up in a family that was very involved in the Black Panther movement, and especially because obviously he's from California, and that is where the Black Panther movement originated from. Fred Hampton was the one who created the Rainbow Party, which was a coalition of multiple liberation groups in the area and around the country that merged together. And that really was the so called nail in his coffin, according to the US government. He also was the one who signed peace treaties between some of the largest gangs in California at the time. And Tupac grew up in a family that was very involved and witnessed all of that, being from the um, areas that were heavily just blanked occupied by gangs and the gang activity. Um, his aunt, in fact, Tupac's aunt, she is in refuge in hiding from the government because she is a wanted woman for inciting political violence. Crazy. In Haiti, I believe, because of the fact that she was so heavily involved in the movement and has now been labeled a danger to American society. I think that has more to do with the fact that she is a black woman who speaks her mind and is an open person who likes socialism. I don't really, now, me personally, I've met many people who prefer socialism over capitalism. I think they're just fine. I don't really think that they aren't inciting violence. I think the problem, obviously, was that she was a member of the Black Panther Party, and they just wanted to crush anything and all of the leaders who had anything to do with the party. Tupac walked this fine line of being a political voice, but also being a mem- member of the gang life and wrapped up in this horrible, not so great lifestyle, right? Um, Tupac was not the greatest person on earth. That's one thing that I think that a lot of people don't realize. They will walk around with his face on a shirt and not know anything about his life or what he did and what he is associated with. And it's stupid because I don't wear anybody's face on any of my shirts. I don't. I don't. No, 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 no. Not Tupac, not Fred Hampton, no, nothing, because I don't want it to be an outward showing of, oh yeah, I support black people. No, I want it to be like, I want you to know when I walk in, when I see you, when I go to your events, when I buy from your companies, when who I choose to support, that you see that I support black people, right? Um, and Tupac is a prime example of when you add 2 plus 2 and you get 4. What is that? He's a prime example of what happens in those communities with things like this happen. Tupac was killed. He was murdered. Obviously, everybody knows that. But Tupac was killed by another black man in the area that he was not native to. He was killed in Las Vegas, obviously, and I think about that again, of the meaning behind Judas and the Black Messiah. How many times have we as people been pitted against each other by people? And like a lot of people will like to point out, well, Diddy was the one who called the shots on Tupac, and that is a allegedly allegedly a true fact. But at the same time, it was Diddy who was trying to please the capitalist white society, trying to get in the good graces, trying to be seen as more than he was. It was Diddy under the influence of what he wanted to be. He wanted a seat at the table so bad that he would sell out his people. He was Judas to the Black Messiah, being Tupac in this example, just as Fred Hampton was the Messiah for the black people in the Black Panther movement, and then William O'Neill became Judas, and then we go back to the very beginning of it all with Jesus, the greatest revolutionary to ever walk the planet, being sold out by one of his closest friends. I sit here and
Editing me here. It's me, by the way. And this was recorded February, but anyway, off topic. So I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on this point and just like add a few more examples just in case like I don't understand what you're saying. I was saying that over and over again. We have these examples of pillar figures in our communities or a religion with Jesus being sold out by somebody who is close to them because of people in power who fear the person and their influence and what they represent to the community, right? As I said, Diddy allegedly with Tupac. Sorry, I just said, Jesus, and then Fred Hampton, but even in another example that's not like life or death, you can kind of relate this to Drake and Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar, for once upon a time, was referred to as like the messiah and savior of black music, black rap, right? And he embraced that that crown, if you will, if you will, on himself for a while, and then later he goes on to say, "No, that's not me, people. That's not. I'm not. I am a flawed person, and I'm not. I'm not that great. I'm not that good. And in fact, he's not. Once again, as I said, nobody is perfect. But then you have Drake who doesn't understand it, but he wants to. So he infiltrates into the community, gets to know people, and then when things don't go his way, he goes to the powers that be, the government, and says, "Get rid of that man. I don't like the fact. Oh, like, can you help me out? I know you don't like him, so why don't you help me get rid of him?" And if there weren't legal structures and power stopping him from doing that, he would have. he would have, and they would have sided with him and his half whiteness. If they had the ability to, but because of regulations that are luckily in place for the rest of us, they did not. They did not, because it was stupid one. But we see it over and over again, example after example in the black community, every time of when other black people have been pitted against somebody who is starting to become an outstanding member of our society, right? And I can't exactly blame Drake entirely for the fact that he did that, because he doesn't know better, right? He didn't grow up in a very literate household. No shade, no shade. Doesn't have to be, He probably didn't read. He probably didn't read To Kill a Mockingbird, and his parents probably didn't read that to him either, right? So you can't exactly be upset at a mixed kid for not understanding the culture when the culture is not taught to them because of the powers of white supremacy that are at play and everything. But then feeding and leeching off of that same culture that they were not taught and were basically ignored to benefit themselves, and then casting that culture away when it does not do exactly what they want it to do in the time frame that they want it to happen, and everything. It's a horrible system, obviously, that is crumbling and eating us all. It's May 2026, so I think you can understand where I'm coming from when I say that we are in the dark ages over here. Okay, okay.
I think to myself, why do they keep shooting us? Like, we keep getting shot. We keep getting shot by the government. We keep getting shot by the government. Okay? Like, this is crazy, people. This is crazy. Like, there's a problem in the US government, and they keep killing black people. If you don't believe it, that's your problem. Go do some history. Do you know who Emmett Till is? That's my question. I am not sitting here and I'm not describing, and I'm not going to do a breakdown on the film of Judas and the Black Messiah. That's that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to bring some awareness. This is being filmed in February, so it's Black History Month. For me, you probably won't see this till the summertime. But we have such an important moment in our lives, in learning to respond, and how we respond to that is going to impact your children and your great-grandchildren, and so many people to come in America. And I hope that you choose to be a revolutionary. You don't have to agree with everything that Fred Hampton stood for. I don't. You don't have to agree with everything that some of the other revolutionaries stood for. Rosa Parks, she went to school to learn how to be a revolutionary in Tennessee, Kentucky, something. It's like a school. It's still there. In fact, you don't have to march all the way to Salem. You don't have to be the next president of the United States. You don't have to be the next Obamas. You don't have to change your name. You don't have to be a preacher. You don't have to be Malcolm X. You don't have to be Martin Luther King Jr. You don't. You just have to be a revolutionary. And I think that sometimes we get caught in the word of a revolutionary. That's somebody who obviously marches at the front. No. No. A revolutionary is somebody who just shows up, who stands in the back, who provides the water for the protesters, who feeds the hungry, who makes sure that people are taken care of. Those are revolutionaries. We think of Joan of Arc, and we think of her being a revolutionary. But do you think of the girls who followed Joan of Arc after they learned about what she did, after she was martyred and betrayed by her country? They were revolutionaries. You are a revolutionary, just as I am. And so, right now you have a choice. You can be caught in the snare and the traps that the government has set for you to continue this infighting and the destruction between us, and let the pigs in power continue to eat. Go read Animal Farm. It's a great book. I read it as a child and I didn't understand it, and I kept reading it and I reread it, and then as I got older it made sense. I came from a very literate household. We have books, a lot of them, and a lot of them are written by revolutionaries. And I know what you're saying. Well, they sat in the back and they didn't do anything about it. No, they sat in the front and they wrote about it. There's a difference. Be a revolutionary. Understand what's happening. I read A Clockwork Orange my senior year of college. I'm not college. Oh my gosh, I'm still in college. I just want to be done. Off topic. My senior year of high school. And it is one of the worst books I have ever seen. It is horrible. It is horrible. It genuinely makes my skin crawl. I think it has a lot to do with everything that is happening right now, and the fact that I think about it when I think of Judas, a modern day Judas. If you haven't read A Clockwork Orange, it's about a kid who ends up getting brainwashed by the government. He's a terrible person, okay? And he gets tortured and brainwashed by the government and tested on until he becomes the model citizen in their eyes. And this model citizen is suffering. He's tormented. He is plagued by these actions that have been taken against him, but also the actions that he has done. And in the end, nothing changes. He goes back to being the terrible person that he was, and they continue with the horrible experiment, and the world goes on. It's a dystopian book. It's terrible. It's terrible in a great way, because it actually teaches you a lesson on what the government will do. And I think about that. I think about that brainwashing is it's not exactly the same, obviously, as in The Clockwork Orange, but it's the same. Diddy was brainwashed by the idea that he would ever have a seat at the table with all of the other producers who were white, and the other directors, and he wanted to be seen. And William O'Neill was brainwashed with the idea that he would be set free and liberated and would not be pursued by the government if he gave up. Fred Hampton and Judas thought that he would actually be able to see God if he gave up God. You have a choice today, every day, until the day you die. You can choose who you want to be. It's entirely up to you. I can't sit here and say, oh, you have to be. You have to be. No. But at least for me, I choose to be a revolutionary. And I hope, for the sake of all of us, you do too.